I remember after my trip, there's a scene in the book. It's actually one of the craziest diaries I've ever read. There's a scene because Fawcett had done several expeditions before he did his final expedition looking for this place he called Z, where he disappeared with his older son and his older son's best friend.
But we had put a pin in Percy Fawcett
and
the lost city of Z, which is, it's a tragic tale, but it's Percy Fawcett's like this heroic figure. He's this larger than life type guy, this British industrious kind of dude, but industrious not for business, industrious to go into the middle of the jungle and find the secrets. And he went down, obviously, somewhere in there. But, I can't remember if this was off camera as well, because we were talking before, but what was the first inkling in you wanting to look into his story?
You never know where you're going to find a story. I don't think I told you this. I was doing a story for the New Yorker magazine on the world's greatest Sherlock Holmes scholar, who was found mysteriously garroted in his apartment. True story. And so I was reading everything about Conan Doyle, who wrote the Sherlock Holmes books, and I was reading a biography or some text. It was very boring, but there was a footnote that said that Conan Doyle's novel *The Lost World* was partly inspired by this character, this real life explorer named Percy Harrison Fawcett. I had never heard of the guy, and so I looked him up, and then up, in these old newspaper archives, and up came these like banner headlines in the New York Times. British explorer disappears into the Amazon with his oldest son. British explorer not heard from for months. Wife of British explorer believes he's still alive. Movie star goes in search of missing explorer. Movie star disappears. And you're just like, this is the craziest story. And you're like, and it was kind of one of these sensations in its day. I mean, it was everywhere. It would have been like, it was like the OJ story of its day. You just couldn't, you could have been, I mean, there were cartoons that influenced Tintin. I mean, there were, you could have been anywhere. And like, it was the best analogy would have been like saying at a certain point, if you said like, where's Jimmy Hoffa buried? Yes. People would say, where is Fawcett? Like, where is Fawcett? Because he vanished. Yeah. So that was its origin. So it was a footnote. It was literally a footnote in a boring book.
That's it.
That was it. It's just a footnote.
And then you just went down the rabbit hole.
And then I went down the rabbit hole.
Okay. And as you said, you're not an explorer by nature.
Oh, come on. Now, can take one look at me. I'm Larry David. No, yes, I'm not an explorer. Now, I will say,
But you did it.
I did it. And the funny thing is, we talked about the wager, and like, I love the sea. And I've actually, I've done things at sea. And so even though like I'm not used to those kind of seas, I'm used to sea. I'm not a jungle person. I mean, I hate to camp. I really do. I don't get the whole camping thing. I never have. I mean, like, what do you do? You're just going to lay there in the woods? I feel people are going to mock me, your listeners.
I'm getting PTSD right now because I did it in the Amazon last May.
Oh, you did? How was it?
We're not going to talk about that. Oh. It was tough.
It's tough, right?
Yeah, Paul Rosalie took me to an abandoned beach deep by the Brazilian border where the uncontacted tribes are, and there was an incident that night with some leafcutter ants.
Oh, shit.
I think I filled my camping tank for the rest of my life.
Oh, yeah.
And the whole time, David, when I was sitting in that tent in hell while we were about to get eaten, I was also thinking about the bug that bites you on the lip that you wrote about. Oh. That then, you think you're fine, and 20 years later, you keel over dead.
Oh, you just die.
That was not a nice thought to have.
That was not nice. Well, I'll tell you, so I always hire a fact checker to fact check my books, and it's a New Yorker fact checker usually, or another fact checker, and they go through it and they just make sure I do my own check-in, and I have someone else check it just to make sure I'm accurate. I don't want to have mistakes, and inevitably you might have one, but you want to try to be as careful and as accurate as you can. I remember after my trip, there's a scene in the book. It's actually one of the craziest diaries I've ever read. There's a scene because Fawcett had done several expeditions before he did his final expedition looking for this place he called Z, where he disappeared with his older son and his older son's best friend. But he had kind of mapped a lot of the borders, a lot of the states of Bolivia and in the jungle. And he had at one point gone on an expedition with an explorer who had actually been with Shackleton. I'm pretty sure he'd been with Shackleton.
In Antarctica?
Yeah, in Antarctica. Yeah. And he decided to team up with Murray was his name. It's been a long time. I haven't talked about Z in a long time. And he teamed up with Fawcett.
It's a good story.
And they're both kind of, they're both egomaniacs. They're both, who's the better explorer, who's, and Murray's like the Antarctic's harder, and Fawcett's like, the jungle. But they are two completely different forms of exploration, as I came to realize. One is about a complete deprivation. If you're in Antarctica, it's actually a deprivation of all your senses, a lack of color, a lack of biodiversity. I mean, nothing's alive.
Yeah.
And when you're in the jungle, it's the exact opposite. It's like an overwhelming stimuli
Everything's
of
alive.
everything. Everything is alive.
Yes.
Everything around you, right? I mean, as you know.
Yeah.
And, you know, bugs, whatever, snakes are the things that got you. And so in any case, they go on this expedition. And Murray, it's the craziest diary I think I've ever read.
It's like a black comedy when you write that part.
Oh, yeah. It's just crazy. And I don't even remember they're like these bot things. I don't even remember. They drop something on you. It's been so long now. They drop something on you, and then it's like a thing, and it burrows under your skin. And then this fly, then it burrows under your skin, and it's a worm, basically.
Yeah.
It's like a little, and it grows inside your body. It's growing, and then your head would sometimes pop out of your skin. And Murray's getting his whole body taken over by these things, and he's losing his mind, as you can imagine. And Fawcett, who was as tough as nails, and also
You're too slow.
he is. No, are you kidding me? Not only was he too slow, Fawcett was, I'm telling you, like, Fawcett was the last person I'd ever, like, you ever want to be on an expedition with, because Fawcett was just like, I'm getting to point Z, or, you know, I'm getting there, and you know what? And he would make them actually, anyone who joined an expedition had to agree that, yeah, if at a certain point you're dying,
Too bad.
we're going to leave you because we can't carry you out. We're not going to survive. And so that's part of the deal. You have to basically join a contract. And so Murray, at a certain point, his body's getting taken over by these worms, and he's losing his mind because he's just so grossed out by these things. And Fawcett, at a certain point, he's like, yeah,
Leave him.
we'll get there's a horse. We'll, you know, go that way. go that way, and hopefully you'll find it.
And there's, by the way, for people out there, there's no jungle trails.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You're not like sitting in the middle of a path waiting for. No. This is brush everywhere. You have to machete your way through it. And as you said, everything grows on top of each other. Like every time Paul goes out on the pathways that they've carved, just their little areas near there, he brings a machete, and he would hand us machetes because they're constantly cutting down new brush that grew from like the fucking day before.
Yeah, 100%,
crazy,
100%. It's like, you know, it's like a green out. I mean, you just and you know, there's a certain point where you could just get completely. If you don't know where you're going, you will get completely turned around.
Yes.
So in any case, Murray ends up, he somehow manages to survive. And then they have this horrible feud back in England, and it's kind of a scandal. They're trying to keep the scandal from reaching the press. But the reason I tell the story is my fact checker, back to my fact checker,
It's a good tangent.
So my fact checker is fact checking the worms, and I've kind of described the length of them based on the diaries, how long they were and how long they grew. And she, oh, David, I really want to show you something, you know. And she goes to the computer, and there was like a YouTube video of one of these things, and somebody's having it pulled out of his back. And I looked at that thing. I looked at that thing, and I said, first of all, I was so grossed out, but I said, thank God I saw that after the fact, because had I seen that before, I never would have gone.
Yeah. Yeah, there's people I know who will not go with Paul down there. I'm like, oh, it's great. You should go. He's got it under control. But there is so much that can go wrong.
Oh, yeah. And I don't like snakes. Crazy. And yeah. But I mean, I will say it was a remarkable trip. But it did not make me love the jungle. I will say
Where did you go, by the way?
I was in the Xingu, southern basin of the Amazon, along the Xingu River.
In Brazil.
In Brazil, yeah. It's in southern basin of the Amazon. And you know, for me, because I'm not a jungle person, and the trip did not turn me into a jungle person. But, you know, I had these meetings with various indigenous communities along the way, set up by a guide, and, you know, met with the Kwikuru and the Kalapala. And that was just incredible experiences.
Yeah.
I mean, just amazing. I mean, and hearing oral history. I mean, someone had oral histories about Fawcett. I mean, you know,
what'd they say?
Oh yeah, because Fawcett, for the Kalapalas, you know, Fawcett was among the first white people they had ever seen, and they have, oh man, they have an oral tradition, and an anthropologist had actually translated one of these oral histories about their encounter with Fawcett.
Whoa.
And it's they're beautiful. I mean, they're kind of like an epic poem. I mean, they're really these beautiful oral histories because she had translated them so beautifully. And you know, it actually, first of all, we talked about skepticism. You know, it's like, okay, in oral history, is it accurate? Well, in the oral history, they describe Fawcett as playing a little musical instrument. I knew that because I had in private letters from Fawcett to his wife that he brought a recorder with him. That was not ever in the press, never made public.
You check that.
Oh, yeah. I'd never seen it. It was never mentioned. So I was like,
That's good. They're good.
this is
They're
good.
on it.
The story, this is not BS. This is a real story.
Go on.
Yes, exactly. And then that story had real clues because they said they tried to discourage them from heading, was it east? I think it was.
Like their ancestors had.
Yeah, in this oral history. And they were repeating the oral history for me. Actually, one of the descendants was repeating the oral history to me. And they're trying to dissuade them from heading east to what they refer to as the Fierce Indians, a group. And then they describe how they could see the fire rising into the sky from their encampment for several days. And then the fire went out. And then they go and they inspect the area eventually. And there's no sign of them. But, the implication is they've been killed. And it's probably the most likely explanation, too. Because, first of all, Fawcett was such a survivor. The idea that all three of them would have died and communication would have ceased instantly from all of them suggests they were killed abruptly. And also, and he just had powers of survival kind of living in the jungle, So I thought that oral history had real clues.
Yeah, the level of the sinister nature of them dying, though, could be a range. It could be as sinister as an uncontacted tribe got a hold of them and, I don't know, ate them or something, whatever, something crazy like that. Or it could be a tree fell on them. Yeah. Or,
disease,
a jaguar got to him.
Hunger.
Hunger.
I mean, that's the thing you learn about the jungle, too. Especially the Europeans would often starve because they weren't accustomed to finding food. It's really challenging, even in that very biodiverse area, to find food if you're not good at it, know. And it was partly why a lot of Europeans always thought, the jungle is completely uninhabitable because they would get in there, they would get disease, and they would die. And yet, Indigenous communities, a little bit like the Karaskar we talked about, they've been there for hundreds and hundreds of years, and they know how to live there, and they've adapted to the terrain. And terrain that seems so hostile to foreigners, to them has, they have plants that, offer medicines. Right. In the groups where I was using, they would use this kind of, they would shoot these darts and have a kind of I don't remember it's like a poison, but it's not quite a poison. It doesn't kill you, but it would stun the fish. And then the fish would just get stunned.
And float.
And they would float. And then they would just pick them up and they would still be alive. And then they would eat them. They wouldn't even have to fish them out.
That's nuts.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for checking out this clip. If you haven't already subscribed, please subscribe and hit the like button on this video. It is a huge, huge help. And if you'd like to check out this clip's full podcast episode, that link is in the description below or right here. And finally, you can follow me on Instagram and X by using the links in my description below.